Welcome. Thank you so much to my good friend Frank Gaffney for the work that you and your team are doing to organize these important gatherings, and for giving me the opportunity to participate even when I can't be with you in person. I wish I could be with you. You're doing a great service to our nation. We are facing such terrible challenges here at home, with stalled economic growth, out-of-control regulation, the Supreme Court's rewriting of the failed law that is Obamacare and forcing it on the American people. Not to mention what seem to be systematic attacks on our constitutional liberties. Freedom of religion, freedom of expression, the right to keep and bear arms. So much so that you might be forgiven for thinking that Americans would be facing inwards this summer and ignoring events beyond our shores. But the problem is we can't. Here we are, 6.5 years into the Obama administration, and the problems abroad just keep getting worse. We see Greece in an economic meltdown that it severely threatens our European allies. We see China brazenly supporting cyber espionage. We see Vladimir Putin installing troops in eastern Ukraine with impunity. And then there's ISIS. We're coming up on 1 year since President Obama started the military action for which he recently admitted he still doesn't have a strategy. This week he made some news when he went over to the Pentagon to be briefed on it and announced that what was needed to defeat ISIS was some, quote, better ideas. I find myself in a rare moment of agreement with President Obama here. I think we do need some better ideas than the ones that have been informing his action so far. Here are two, for example. One, we take advantage of our overwhelming air superiority and unleash a sustained and relentless air campaign to decimate ISIS. And two, we take advantage of our existing effective allies on the ground, the Kurds, and take immediate steps to get them the arms and supplies they need to take the fight to ISIS. The thing is that, even as bad as the threat of ISIS is, if we focused on our advantages, there's every indication that they could be defeated. But here we are almost a year later, and ISIS continues to rape, torture, mutilate, drown, immolate, and crucify their victims. Meanwhile, this administration insists on doubling down on their failed strategy of trying to achieve political reconciliation in Baghdad and trying to train and equip the Iraqi security forces that seem to have no interest in securing their own country. What's even more disturbing, however, is the other failed strategy that the Obama administration seems determined to double down on, which is what I want to focus on today. Their proposed nuclear deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran. At the time I'm recording this video, we still don't know how the ongoing negotiations in Vienna will play out. They have blown through deadline after deadline after deadline, insisting each time that just a little more time will do the trick. It no longer matters, because by any metric, these talks have already failed. Without rules or principles, guided only by the political desperation of a president and his successive secretaries of state to get any deal out of the mullahs, this hapless project has dragged on for more than 18 months. All of the stated American positions, that the Iranians would never be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, that there would be the most thorough and intrusive inspection regime in history, that there was a credible military option on the table. Every one of those has gone by the wayside. The Iranians, meanwhile, maintained throughout that they have a, quote, right to enrich uranium, that they are going to keep enriching uranium, and that the IAEA inspectors will not have unfettered access to their more sensitive military sites. if they have access to them at all. Their aggressive state sponsorship of terrorism, their cruel and arbitrary detention of American citizens in their dungeons, their ballistic missile program, the only purpose of which is to deliver a nuclear weapon to the United States of America, the Iranians have refused to discuss any of those. And all of that seems perfectly acceptable to the Obama administration. The Iranians' declared desire is to annihilate our close friend and ally, the State of Israel. And in their words, they view that objective as, quote, non-negotiable. This last point is worth reflecting on, because it gets to the heart of why the Israelis are rightly so adamantly opposed to this deal. It isn't because of some personal pique between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Obama. For the Prime Minister, this isn't personal. It's about an existential threat to the Jewish state. And I've observed when the word existential, when Prime Minister Netanyahu uses that, he doesn't mean chain-smoking Frenchmen wearing black berets. He means going to the very existence of the nation of Israel. You might think, given our long and profound relationship with Israel, that the sustained and united Israeli opposition across political parties to this hapless and foolish deal might at least give the Obama administration pause. But it hasn't. Because for President Obama, the Iran deal appears to be personal. It's all about his administration's political legacy. It is, as Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes put it, the Obamacare of the second term. I think he meant that as a compliment. The president said a few weeks back that we could trust him on this deal because, quote, his name would be on it and he has the most to lose. With all due respect to Mr. Obama, this is about more than his political bragging rights. For Prime Minister Netanyahu, this is about the millions of citizens who elected him to lead them, whose extermination the leaders of Iran have said is non-negotiable. And it's about the security of the American people. Because have no doubt about it, once they have destroyed the little Satan, the Iranians will not be content. Their ultimate goal, the real purpose of that nuclear-armed ICBM program, is what they call the Great Satan, the United States of America. The one good thing about this endless negotiating process is that by missing the July 9th deadline to get a deal to Congress, the administration has opened itself up to the one thing it fears the most, the scrutiny of the American people, the truth. Because according to the Iran legislation that both houses of Congress passed and the president signed into law, your elected representatives will now have not just 30 days, but rather 60 days to review any deal. And you, the people, have 60 days to let them know how you feel about it. This means we have August, which might at first not seem like much. August may traditionally be the time for cookouts and beach trips. But there is another tradition in America. It is also the time when members of Congress spend the most time in their districts and states, hearing from their constituents. This August should be a referendum on this disastrous Iran deal. And I urge each and every one of you to contact your representatives and insist that they oppose this foolhardy deal. Go to a town hall meeting and ask about the deal. And get in touch with your friends in other states and urge them to do the same. Frank Gaffney and Fred Fleitz recently wrote an op-ed in the Jerusalem Post that set out 9 common-sense parameters for an Iran agreement. You might ask them, ask your senator, ask your congressman or woman, why this deal meets none of those 9. You might ask why the Obama administration is pursuing a deal against the concerted opposition of our traditional allies in the Middle East. Not only Israel, but also Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and the Gulf states. You might ask the simplest question of all, which is why President Obama's quest for a foreign policy legacy, for a political talking point, should trump the safety and national security of the American people. I guarantee you, this fight has only begun. Together, we can expose this bad deal for what it is. I give you my word. I will do everything humanly possible to stop it. And if it comes to it, I can promise you that with your support, in January 2017, we will have a president who, when he says, under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to get a nuclear weapon, he will mean it. And he will back it up with the full force of the Commander-in-Chief of the United States of America. We're gathered here today protecting the lives of our children, protecting the lives of our grandchildren. We're gathered here today standing for our great nation. I thank you for your passion, for your commitment to the future of this country. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless the United States of America.